Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Sunandini and I'll be your host for tonight. The 2023 batch is getting ready for B school interviews and the current batches are getting ready for job interviews. And this is not it. I'm many sure people are trying to get their hands on product management roles. And we are here to help all of you to give you an idea about what product managers do and what is their role. And for you to make a decision whether you fit in this role, this career path, or you want to, maybe we can tweak your imagination about what you think what a product manager does. So please welcome with me, Mr. Aaditya Poodipeddi. Please, apologies for the pronunciation beforehand. The lead product manager from Ditto Insurance by Finshots. He's a BITS-Pilani and an IIM-A Alum of the batch 2016-2018. He has worn many hats post-MBA, shifted roles from a consultant at Deloitte to a product manager at Next India Education India Private Limited to a lead product manager at Ditto Insurance in October 2022. And we are going to ask a lead product manager to answer the top 10 questions asked to a PM in an interview. So really great having you here, Aditya.
Thanks, Sunandini. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. So in case, guys, please continue.
I mean, thanks for the welcome, and it's actually Poodipeddi. I know it's
Poodipeddi.
no, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to pronounce.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, happy to be here, and yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Great. So guys, if you have any questions, you can drop that and comment on the live chat, and we'll take them up in the Q&A later on. Let's start this. Let's get into the basics and understand. Question number 1, what does a product manager do?
Right. So even before I get into this, right, just a small sort of change to what you said earlier. I mean, I don't think these would probably be the interview questions as such. Some of them at least, right? Some of them could be interview questions. Some of them are to understand what, like you said, the product manager role does and how, the career looks like and so on, right? So with that, I mean, product manager is a fairly sort of comparatively new role, compared to other roles that you typically have in the industry. Right? For example, marketing has been there forever. There was in the software industry, there were developers, QA testers, and so on. Right? But product manager and project manager has been like a more popular role. But product manager in that sense has sort of evolved over the last few years. And there is no exact definition of the role as such. I mean, so for example, if you have a developer or a QA, you know what they do. There's like a defined, role or defined, job description for them. But for product manager, it's sort of, it depends on the company that you work with. It's very different, for example, in a startup than it is in a large organization, and it sort of depends on whether it's a B2C company or a B2B. So it keeps changing a lot, but there definitely are some common elements across all these roles. And one thing that sort of in a nutshell, if you have to understand what the role of a product manager is, that product manager is typically the voice of the customer in the meeting room, right? So when you have people from different teams in a meeting room discussing about business, product, and so on, the voice of the customer is typically represented by the product manager. So in that sense, sort of understanding what a customer needs and trying to create a solution for that problem is I think one of the key functions of product manager. Right? So it's also about trying to, I mean, it starts from here, and then you basically have to define what the company has to, company or the team, right, has to go after, because there are lots of problems to solve, right? So any domain you take, any kind of business that you're in, there are lots of problems to be solved, right? So obviously, as a company, you can't go after each one of them. So the onus is on, along with others. Product manager is one of the key stakeholders in deciding what problems to go after and solve.
Got it. Now, if we connect this your personal career journey, and I want to know, why did you want to be a PM? Did you ever like forever wanted to be a PM, or you landed up here by chance? And what is the career trajectory?
Right, right. So yeah, I mean, I a bit of uh, uh, introduction. I mean, a bit about my background, right? So I did my bachelor's in BITS-Pilani. And so I was an engineer and I was a developer. I joined a startup as a developer. I worked for a couple of years and then I did an MBA. Right.
Mm.
So product management is a role where there is an overlap between tech and business. It is essentially at the intersection of tech and business. So it is sort of a natural fit for people who are from engineering and MBA backgrounds, right? So in that sense, it was sort of a natural fit for me as well. In fact, when I was preparing for my placements in B school, I wanted to get into a broadband role, but I happened to land in a different role in consulting. So I
Mm.
joined Deloitte. I worked for a couple of years, and then I sort of felt that that was probably not my cup of tea. That's when I wanted to again make the switch to product management. So that's how the my career shaped up. Happy to be in this role. I mean, I've learned a lot of things over the last few years that I've been in this role. Like I said earlier, it's an intersection between tech and business. So you get to sort of use both sides of your, uh, education if you're from that background, right? So interesting problems to solve. And these days, increasingly, it's becoming more and more. I mean, every company is focusing on tech, and there are lots of I mean, tech is no longer the enabler. It has sort of become a key component in business, right? So in that sense, the role has been gaining a lot of prominence of late.
Mm.
In terms of career path, you typically start off as like a junior product manager, associate product manager in a company, and then you sort of work your way upwards to product manager, lead product manager, head of product, and so on. Typically, people who sort of have been in, say, the head of product roles tend to also lead businesses, maybe
Mm.
go and lead a country or something like that. So, yeah.
So
I
I
mean,
think,
some of the famous names, for example, Sundar Pichai was
yeah,
a product manager for
yeah.
Chrome, right? And so on. So, lots of product managers have gone on to head businesses as well.
So as you said, there's no proper job description. It's all about which company you're working for, what is the product exactly that you're trying to sell or give up to the people and the customer, understanding the customer, and so on and so forth. So
Right.
what I want to know is, if so, it's like a problem solving thing. So you are given a problem. Okay, this is not working. So please make it work. Now, my
Yeah.
question is, if you're sitting and I give you a problem and you don't know the answer to that already, so how is
Yeah.
the path from you putting across the question? Do you Google the question, and from that point till the point where you find the answer to the problem? So how does that process work?
Right. So typically, right, I don't think you would be able to find answers on Google straight
You
away.
wish.
But uh, also, see, most of the problems are vague, right? They're not very well-defined problems. So I
Hmm.
think what is important for a product manager is to spend a lot of time in trying to understand and refine the problem, right? So it's important to have like a very concrete problem statement before you start looking for solutions. In fact, ideating for the solution and then coming up with like a solution is probably the easier part compared to figuring out, like I was saying earlier, which problem to solve for and
Hmm.
what exactly that problem is, right? Because it's not, it's not defined for you. Nobody comes and gives you that problem statement. It is your job to basically talk to, be it the customers or be it your own employees, to figure out, say, what the challenges are.
Hmm.
And most often it's not like problem, it's like a set of challenges that maybe customers are facing, maybe internal employees are facing, and so on. So it's about talking to all of these different stakeholders, trying to, and then sort of defining the problem. And then you'll also have to get the buy-in of the management, to sort of solve that, put in resources to solve that problem, right? So, for example, say you do your customer research and come up with some problem statement, right? Say you have to build a feature to help solve XYZ problem, right? Now, why should the company spend time and resources trying to solve this problem? What will the company get in return? That is also something that you have to come up with and get the buy-in of the management. That is when you'll get the go ahead to solve for it. And that's when you sort of build a solution and implement it.
Got it. So, do you have an example of there are times when you don't have the data? So, you are solving a problem when maybe you need some data, you contact people or do something. But there are times when you can't find the data, you don't have it online, or you don't have the opportunity to talk to people. Do you have any example where you're not able to find the data, but you're trying to figure out the answer and you did find it in a different way possible? So, is there an example for that?
Yes, I mean, see, example, I'll have to think about it, but actually, you encounter this quite often in your day-to-day work life, right? So, lots of times, what happens is while you would like to be data-driven, you would like to take all your decisions based on data. It's very hard to get data in the real world, whichever domain you're talking about, right? So, for example, I was in an edtech company earlier. Next Education. It was a B2B SaaS company, right? So we built software for schools, right? So you do have some data in terms of say the usage patterns and things like that, and you do also have data from market research. Okay, how are the competitors doing? How is the market looking like, and so on. But when you get into like the next level detail, many times there is a lack of data. You won't have like concrete data to work with. That's when I think it's important to sort of talk to customers, potential customers, understand their need, and then at some point you'll have to, based on, I mean, there'll be some data, right? Based on that data, you'll have to take a educated guess, I would say. Right. So that's where your experience or your problem solving abilities and your interactions with the customers, everybody comes into the picture, right? Had there been like proper data, you could, I mean, it's more of, you can rely on the data and sort of maybe come up with like a very clear solution, but most in practical situations that won't happen a lot. That's sort of where your ability comes into the picture.
So is experience a like very important thing to become a PM? Because I know many MBA people just go on and start their career from a product manager role.
Yeah.
So do you think experience is needed?
No, not really. I mean, again, but when you start off as a fresher without experience, you start at like junior roles, right? So you start off as an associate PM or PM, right? So and you try to solve like smaller problems to start with. Obviously there's like a hierarchy in the product team as well, so you'll be reporting to maybe a senior product manager and so on, right? But as you grow in the career, in the role, that's when you tend to take on more undefined or vague problems.
Got it.
Yeah, but to answer your question in short, expense is not something that is sort of needed.
Yeah. Got it. So, since you're the lead product manager, and I'm gonna just pitch in some interview questions that people ask, and product managers, that this webinar can be a cheat sheet for those who want to be a product manager. So, for that, my first question is: imagine like what's your one favorite product? And what do you want to change about it? I think it's a classic PM question. So
yeah, it's a classic question. Okay, you mostly encounter this in all interviews, right?
Yes.
It's been a while since I've taken an interview, given an interview, but look, I mean, see, usually all of us, right? We tend to use lots of products in our daily life, right? So we use right from B2C products like say the food ordering apps like Swiggy, Zomato, to the Ubers and Olas and whatnot, right? And then at work, you also tend to use, at least in my line of work, we use some tools to make our lives easier. For example, analytics tools. Let's take a simple example like Google Analytics, right? Or something like Amplitude to track the user journeys and so on. So there are lots of products and tools that everybody uses every day. So it's hard to pick one favorite, to be honest.
Mm.
I for one don't have like a favorite product. But something that I use quite often is uh, maybe like Zomato,
Mm.
Swiggy, right? And I also use the cab hailing cabs
Mm.
apps quite often, right? But if we take something like Zomato, again, obviously there are huge teams, building this project, and it's a fantastic project. So it's not, I can't really say that this is bad or
Mm.
this needs to be changed. But one feature that I would definitely like to add is some sort of a recommendation feature, right? So in what happens is I'll give you the use case, right? So very often I just open Zomato and I want to basically go out to eat, right? So I want to pick a restaurant,
Mm.
but Zomato typically shows you all the restaurants in a particular area or based on the kind of cuisine you want to eat and so on.
Mm.
But I still end up not being able to decide where to go, right?
Yeah.
So I have the list, I go through the list, but I'm at the end of the exercise, I'm unable to decide which one to pick, right?
Mm.
So what I would like to have in an app like Zomato is maybe a recommendation based on, again, my interactions with the app. Right? So Zomato knows me to a certain
Mm.
extent. It knows what I typically order, maybe which days of the week I order what, where do I tend to go typically on, say, weekends, and so on. Right. So if it throws out, like, say, a couple or three recommendations saying, this weekend, why don't you try this ABC? Okay,
Mm.
restaurant A with cuisine, whatever, Italian or whatever it is. Right. So that is something that I would probably try out. Again,
Mm.
I know it's hard to build
Yeah.
because you could always say that no, this recommendation is not cool for me. But we do have recommendation engines, right? I mean, everywhere. Like if you take Netflix, for example, you have recommendations based on what you watch.
Yeah.
So something of that sort would be nice to have, I guess.
That is interesting. And you know what will happen in case Zomato is wrong, okay, most of the times, then we'll be so pissed at Zomato itself. Imagine that.
Yeah,
You are so
correct,
wrong.
correct.
No, I don't want to have
Yeah,
gulab jamun today. So
absolutely,
that whole
absolutely.
mentality.
Which is why it is very important to get, when you build a feature like this,
Yeah, you have
it's
to be
very
correct.
important to, yeah. And you can't be entirely correct also. So it takes a
Yeah.
lot of time for the algorithm also to sort of learn from
Mm.
data.
That
So
is
you'll have
true.
to test it out with a few customers, run pilots and so on. Yeah.
Hmm. So as you said, for a PM role, we need to understand the consumer side of this whole thing.
Correct.
So I want to put my questions across in the consumer side now. For
Sure.
example, how do you determine what a customer wants? As you said, this like and need. If you
Yeah.
had, do you like ask questions out, or what is it that you do?
Right. So yeah, see, one very important thing that a product manager has to do is talk to customers, right? So this cannot be overemphasized. Be it a B2C company or a B2B company, as a business model,
Hmm.
you have to talk to the customers, right? So that is where you get your insights from.
Right.
And obviously, customers don't sort of give out the insights on a platter for you. So
Yeah.
you'll have to be extremely, what do you say? You'll have to sort of maybe have a set of questions when you talk to them, right? But you may not get the answers that you're looking for. You may get answers in unexpected corners, right? So you may be talking about some topic, and then suddenly the customer mentions something that could give you a potential answer to some other problem, right? So I think it's about observing the customer and sort of when you hear them, just maybe hear them out with an open mind, try to understand exactly what their problems are, what their challenges are, and then it is eventually up to the, see, if you ask customers for what they want, they'll tell you what they want, right? But that is probably not what they're looking for in most cases.
Right.
I know this is cliched, but people keep referring to this Ford example, right? When Henry Ford went and asked customers what they wanted, they said faster
Right.
horses, right? But
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
I mean, that was not what they're looking for. So the problem there was transportation, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Move from point A to point B quickly. The answer was not faster horses, but because customers were used to that, they said,
Hmm.
they were used to horses, so they said faster horses, right?
Mhm.
But then, so the solution is up to the product manager, right? So you understand the problem and you have to come up with better solutions than your customers. That is that is why they pay you to sort of create solutions for their problems.
Got it. So is the customer always right? Do you have, like you said that, yeah, maybe the customer doesn't know many things, but there are questions like maybe you go and like the Nokia and the classic Nokia example where you take
Yeah.
Nokia to them in 2009, I guess. You went there and you asked, do you like Nokia? People are like, yeah, we like it. So do you have any recent example where you can say that, okay, do you believe that customers are always right? Or do
Not
you?
entirely, right? Like you said, or the previous example I mentioned, customers tend to base their sort of answers on things that they know,
Yeah.
right? But they need not always be right. See, what is definitely right is a problem. Okay, you
Yeah.
can't say this is a wrong problem to have. Customers will
Mm.
always have problems, but you should not. I mean, you can ask them for solutions, but end of the day, you should not blindly build their solutions. So
Mm.
the solutioning part is up to the product team, the tech team, to figure
Mm.
out how to solve this problem, right? So in that sense, customer is definitely not right all the time,
Mm.
but definitely the problems are right.
Do you have any example that you created maybe a product which was based on, a case study where you went to the customer said this was the problem, but you found the underlying problem and you created a product which was perfect to solve that problem?
Uh, yeah, I mean, not huge products to be honest. Like, but
Okay.
uh, you know, we so for example, in my previous organization, we like I mentioned earlier, we built software for schools, right? So we had an LMS product, learning management system, to basically, especially during COVID, right? All the school operations were online, right? So be taking classes or giving assignments, taking exams, and so on. Right. So overall, LMS was trying to, connect the various stakeholders,
Hmm.
educators, as in teachers, students, etc., in an online world. Right now, there are lots of features to this product. Assessments, for example, is one. So we had something called adaptive assessments, where you know you threw up questions in an exam based on
Hmm.
the answers to earlier questions. If they're right, you maybe throw up slightly more difficult questions and so on, right? So, so when you're building features like these, when you talk to customers, they again tell you based on their existing experience. So in an offline world, you can't have an adaptive exam, for example, right? So
Hmm.
you can only have static exams, right? So they will tell you that, okay, this is what I want, but
Hmm.
probably something like adaptive makes more sense. It sort of caters to every kind of learner in the classroom, right?
Hmm.
So you have to sort of uh, somehow bridge that gap between
Hmm.
what they're asking for and maybe creating something that is truly next level, right? So in that sense, again, to answer your question, I haven't built any like great products, entire
Hmm.
products as such, but lots of features where you had to sort of disregard the solution provided by the customer and sort of come up with your own solutions.
Got it. So, in interviews, or mainly when someone interviews for the role of PM, one of the major criteria they look into is collaboration. How do they talk? How do they communicate
Yeah.
with their team? So, I want to get into that, like how a PM manages their internal team. So, on that basis, do you have an example of a time when you had to take a short-term loss to
Yeah.
get into a long-term gain? And did it work?
Yeah. So this is one of the most important functions of a PM, right? Stakeholder management and
Yeah.
communicating with the various stakeholders, be it internal or external. And actually, this doesn't always get tested in an interview,
Hmm.
right? Because interview is typically one-on-one, or maybe you have a couple of
Hmm.
interviewers. So the communication with large teams, different kinds of stakeholders is not something that can be tested right off the bat,
Hmm.
right? But once you start the job, start working on in the role, that's when you realize that this communication is key. If not the most important aspect of the job, right? Because lots of times there are delays in what you're building, right? So I mean, you sort of give a deadline, and then very often you are not able to meet that deadline.
Yeah.
So it is up to the product manager to communicate, say the negatives, or say the delays, etc., to be it management or the other teams, all the stakeholders involved. So there's several teams involved in each project, right? So there could be sales teams, marketing teams involved. The tech team is definitely involved. There's design, and so and then there's the customer. So if you promise a deadline to the customers and then you're not able to meet it, that's something that doesn't go down well with most customers, right? So managing this communication is one of the key skills to have, and it is something that, again, if you're a good communicator, it definitely helps you. But again, it is something that you can learn on the job. Keep at it, and then you can pick up the skill, right? So in my case, the short term and long term gain that you asked, right?
Yeah.
So there was one product that we worked on. Again, I joined Ditto recently, so most of my examples are from my previous company, right? So we were during the COVID year 2020, we wanted to launch a learning app. Right, so we have lots of learning apps in the market. We have Byju's, we have Topper, and so on. But given the huge boom that was going on for learning apps, we also wanted to make a learning app. It was We had other products as well, so we had to sort of temporarily stop working on the other products and put resources into building this app. So that, in that sense, it was a long-term bet that we were taking, and not looking at the short-term gains for other products. But we spent quite a bit of time on that, and unfortunately, that didn't do very well. It ended up not being a great hit. So that happens a lot. You meet with a lot of failures. There have been success also, but I would like to take this example, right? I mean, usually what you hear is, okay, somebody built this great product, and it has sort of grown so much and all that. But lots of times people don't talk about failures obviously as often as successes, right? But it is important to keep experimenting, though. You need to have the right process for decision making. You rely on data, you rely on talking to customers, and then you sort of start working on something, but it may not work out in the end, and that is okay. You sort of you can't get wrong very often, but there will be times when you are wrong. And in this particular case, I mean, that example stands out for me, where we were focusing entirely. There were lots of people who were probably against it, but then we wanted to focus on the long term aspect of it, and then we went in and built the product. But then again, it didn't work out the way we wanted it to. Yeah.
Got it. So my next question is, imagine I'm guessing you are working with loads of engineers, and I'm just pitching in a question where you have to just manage this situation where an engineer on your team wasn't able to meet your expectations. So how would you proceed when this happens?
Right. So actually what happens is most engineers don't report to product managers.
Okay.
Right. So in most of the companies, so PM is actually a role, PM as in product manager, right? So it's a role where you have to influence without authority. So people don't report to you directly, but still you'll have to get their buy-in to work on something that you want them to. For example, say, you want to build a feature, right? And then engineers would question you, why should they do it, right? So you can't tell them, okay, you have to do this because I'm your boss. That won't work, because you're not their boss. So you'll have to get their buy-in, you'll have to give your reasoning, you'll have to convince them, negotiate with them, and then ultimately get it done, right? Eventually, if it doesn't work out, the onus is again on the product manager to, I mean, they take the fall for it, right? So negotiation or handling stakeholders is again a very important skill. And very often, yes, in your role, you deal with engineers, you deal with, designers and QA, all these people. But yes, engineers is who you spend most of your time with, right? So if somebody, again, is not meeting your expectations, generally it is up to the, say, the engineering manager to deal with that engineer. So maybe you communicate that to your counterpart in engineering, right, the engineering manager, and you say, okay, this is not happening, and so on. But then also there will be times when you talk to the engineer directly, right? So again, there's no what do you say, cookie cutter approach that you have to follow, right? So it really depends on the individual, right? So you'll have to understand that individual, why they're not maybe performing up to the mark, and then that case is different for different people, right? So uh, it's all about people management end of the day, right? So you'll have to figure out why it's not working in that particular case, and then deal with that case.
Life is very
So yeah,
difficult here because if you would
absolutely.
directly go and say, I am your boss, just do whatever I'm doing, it would have been so much easier.
Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
That is interesting. I didn't know about this part. Anyway, so my next question is the last one. What will you do in the first 90 days of being hired in a company as a PM?
Right. Again, so it to be honest, it depends on what the priorities are. For example, a couple of companies that I work with, I had very different onboarding or first 90-day experiences. Right. So in one company, I was like started working on a project right from day one, whereas in another company, I spent nearly like a month or month and a half trying to figure out, trying to understand how the business works, talking to various stakeholders, customers, etc., and then eventually started on a project, right? So, but I think what is important is that you need to get a very good sense of what the business is all about. What the product. If you work with a product company, what the product is all about. Okay, what exactly does it do? What the business model is. Right. In that sense, you are getting an understanding of not only the product and tech, but also the business side of things. And what is most important is to talk to as many customers as possible. Right. So that's where you get your insights and ideas from. Right. So talking to, I would say in the first 90 days, if the three things that you need to do: understand the product thoroughly, talk to as many customers as you can get it as possible, and then also try to talk to as many teams within the company as possible, and make connects. That becomes really important, right? So as a product manager, again, you are at the I could say in some sense you are like the fulcrum of the entire business, right? So you sort of interact with multiple teams, right? So it is very important that you have connects in all the teams so that your job becomes easier going forward.
Good. So I'm going to finish my questions off because I can see many questions are there by people. And yeah, and this is I wanted to do this live because you are here as the lead PM, and I'm sure many people want to be a PM, so they will have a lot of questions. I'm going to put forward and put across the platform for our questions and our audience to ask questions. So the first question, ready, right? Ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because there are many questions I can see. That's right. So the first
We'll
question,
see. I mean, as many as possible,
possible.
given the time.
I won't take much time. So the first question is by Suraj. She's asking, what is your salary right now? Can you maybe give us a range?
Unfortunately, that is not something I can disclose. Very sorry about that. Yeah, but
So sorry. But can
yeah.
we get a
I mean,
range of
industry standard.
something which a PM like normally gets or starts with? Maybe starts with.
Again, see, I think it really depends on the company, the sector you're working in, if it's a startup versus a big company, etc. And see, this is something that you will be able to find easily on Google,
Online.
right? So
Yeah.
lots of
Google it,
yeah.
Suraj. The next question we have is from Dikshit. He's asking, how is the growth prospect in product management versus big tech sales? I have two offers, one to go with the PM in a European firm, while other being a big tech sales in Google, more of a customer success role. Do you have any suggestions?
Again, see, I think it really depends on what you want to do as an individual, right? Where your interests lie. For example, I know a few friends of mine who are very clear that they want to work in sales, for example. Right? So that is what that role gives them the kick, right? Whereas many others want to work in product management. See, lots of times what happens is I've seen people moving from customer success into the product role. Uh, right. So that happens. Uh, and that will actually give you a very good perspective because you've worked in the customer success role. It sort of gives you first-hand picture of what's happening with the customers. You hear directly from the horse's mouth, if you will. So that helps you immensely when you get into the product role. Right. So in fact, I think in my previous company, when we were hiring for the product role, we took profiles from the customer success, as in people who had customer success experience, right? So, but again, if you ask me, do I have to choose this or this? I think they offer different career paths, trajectories. At some point, they could overlap, but then again, you could be you could be in the sales org throughout your career and do great there. So I think it really depends on what you want to do at the end of the day, right? If your interest is in, I mean, sales is a different ball game altogether, right? So if that is what is your calling, then probably you should go for that.
Okay. So the next question is by Adarsh. Adarsh, if I'm not wrong, I'm just going to reframe the question and ask. If I'm wrong, just put it on the chat box. So he's asking, only startups have a proper role for PM. So what is your take? Do only startups have a proper role for PM?
No, not really. I mean, every company has a role for a PM. So the big companies, right? For example, you have PMs in Amazon, Microsoft, Google. Yeah, I mean, PM role is present in startups as well as in big techs as well.
So the next question is, he's a functional lead business analyst with 6 years of experience and IMT Ghaziabad pass out. So how should I leverage my experience to get into product role? I am a pure functional guy.
I mean, from what I understand, I think when you say functional, I'm assuming you have the knowledge of a particular sort of domain or area of that particular product, right? So again, if you have had a lot of interaction with customers, that would definitely sort of help you. I mean, that is something that you can leverage if you want to get into a product role, because like I have been mentioning, that customer point of view, getting access to that customer point of view is critical for a product person, right? So that is something that you can definitely leverage.
Got it. The next question is by Raghav. He's asking, is it difficult for non-engineer to become successful PM after MBA?
Look, the answer is no. It is, I mean, it's challenging, be it for an engineer or a non-engineer, okay? Because that's just the nature of the role. But if you ask me, is it mandatory to have an engineering background? The answer is no. I have known quite a few non-engineering folks who did very well as a product manager, right? So the short answer is no. Just said, as a PM, you tend to, especially in SaaS companies, right, software PMs, you obviously have to interact a lot with the tech team. So if you have an engineering background, that conversation becomes slightly easier, right? So basically, you understand what they're saying better. They understand you. So there's the engineering team will respect you more. But it's not something that only engineers can have. You can definitely pick it up outside of engineering also. What is most important is that you are able to communicate with the tech team. Yeah, as simple as that.
Got it. Understood. Next, we have startup versus MNC, which is a great space for PM to explore, learn, and grow.
Again, see, both kinds of companies have very different flavors, right? So, my personal opinion is that in the early stages of your career, if you want to learn and grow a lot, nothing like a startup, right? So startup sort of throws challenges at you day in, day out, right? So will provide you a steep learning curve. So if I were you, I would probably pick a startup. Yeah.
Got it. The next question is, do you need an MBA degree to become a PM? And if yes, then what specialization should you choose?
No, you don't need an MBA degree to become a PM.
Okay.
You can. I know many people who started off as developers, who started off as QA people, like testers, and who have moved into the product role. They have also been doing amazingly well.
Okay, got it. Next question is by Parth. Can folks in business strategy role who have experience in product management of creating a fintech app enter into product manager management as a direct PM, or they have to start in an associate role?
Not really. In fact, I was in a business strategy role, and I got into a company as a product manager. So you don't have to start as an associate. It really depends on the company, to be honest. Company, how your interview goes, your hiring manager, budget, and so on, lots of things. Yeah.
Got it. Same, like a similar follow-up question for folks with 2 years of experience post MBA in Project MGT. Do you recommend any certification or courses before entering a PM role?
Look, I mean, certifications, to be honest, I've never done. I don't have any certification in product management as such. It is helpful, like when people are looking at your CV or when they're interviewing you, I think it's good to have certifications. But then again, even if you don't have them, they're not. That's not a blocker for you. If you have the problem solving ability, if you have that skill, certifications don't matter as much.
Got it.
They will definitely help you build credibility, but it's not if you don't have them, it's not a red flag.
Got it. I don't know if this is too personal or niche. Any idea what MAANG company is looking out for a PM? Is it important to be a techie or some coding knowledge is required to become a PM?
Not sure really. I mean, I think really depends on the company.
Yes.
Even within these, right? You could have. I know people who are not from coding background who have become product managers, and I know people from coding background who have become product managers, right? So I think it really depends on the team. These are big companies, right? So it depends on the team that is looking to hire and sort of requirement within the team, to be honest.
Okay. So guys, any more questions you can ask around more? What I want to know, to know one thing is which is relevant. You said that most PMs will have to know about the product and the company. So it's logical that you need to know the product, then only you can know what the customer wants or will need and all these things. But is there, if I had to ask you, a skill that is attached to a PM role, which is common, which can be learned in general? So do you have anything like that?
Not one skill, to be honest, but I think you need to have a knack for problem solving, right? So again, as a product manager, you don't always have to build something from scratch, right? So you don't have to, for example, have your engineering team code something and build something, right? So if a team, for example, say you're working, there's an operations team in your company and they have some issue with communicating internally, right? So see, as a PM, you are one of the chief problem solvers in the company, right? So you go to a team, you figure out what the problem is, and then you try to come up with a solution. Now, my point is, you don't always have to build this problem, the solution from scratch. You can use existing tools. You know, if there's any hacks that you can do, for example. So we end up using Spaces, Google Spaces for communication. You know, have like a structured, format in which they would communicate and so on. Point I'm trying to make is you should have that ability or knack for trying to understand what the problem is and being able to solve it. Don't always, so the analytical ability and that sort of a thing, right? But it's not necessary that you always have to come up with like great designs and build products. Yeah.
So one thing I'm just going to add and conclude this whole webinar is so when I was reading through product management, because I'm also very new to this whole thing, I don't know much about it. So before this webinar, I was studying what a PM does and what it doesn't. So I got across this point which I wanted people to know. So I don't know if you watched this or not. There was an interview with the OYO founder Ritesh Agarwal, and he is in love with he it's his hobby to go and explore products that people have made. So someone actually asked him, what is your hobby? So he said, so I don't play games, I don't do those things. What I do is I go to Play Store, I download new apps, and then I open and just see the product, what is happening around, what people are looking into. So that was a crazy thing, and like that got into me that okay, you have to love, you don't have to be given a problem, you should find the problem. So he actually goes to Play Stores, loves the products, he just downloads it and just tries to figure out what he likes, what he doesn't. So that is a very unique thing which if I ever wanted to get into product management, I'm for sure going to do it as a pastime to just explore around different apps. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, and yeah, that is something that I found interesting. So
very interesting to know. Yeah.
So I'm going to conclude this webinar on that note. And thank you so much for joining us, Aditya. And I hope people got some help from you, whoever wants to join PM role. And just, yeah, if you have any questions, guys, you can just text on. If you want to approach Aditya, maybe you can approach him on LinkedIn. Is that fine for me to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, happy to help. Right. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Right. So I can, and yeah, it was a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And yeah, it was great. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.